Self-realization is the first and most important step to come back to your natural self, which is where you are no longer suppressed, conditioned by the patterns of the mind, by wrong perceptions, veils, doubts, fears, and so on, all the diseases of the mind. So when you become healthy from the diseases of the mind, this is what is called being a natural human being, a real human being, or a true human being. Once someone asked Buddha, what did he gain from meditation? And his reply was that he lost anger, he lost worries, he lost fears, sadness, and doubts and confusions. It's a very good answer because meditation is not only about having no thoughts or simply experiencing a momentarily silence. These are only gaps in between the processes of the mind. But once we unravel, untangle, unwind these processes of the mind, including their knots, that's where we experience greater and greater openness. Natural, full consciousness is called Sahaja, and there is a reason why it is called natural, and specifically at that stage. Why isn't consciousness called natural at the level of presence or awareness? Because these degrees or steps of spiritual awakening, a person is usually too much absorbed in a deeper state of consciousness, but not yet complete, not yet being fully the self or themselves. For example, in presence, usually what I witness, a person sits, especially those who are not in our community, they sit half frozen, immersed in beingness, which is a process in itself. And it is not being free. It is not being natural, not being the self yet. Same thing with awareness, awakening, which is a beautiful step, advanced, but a person is still too much fixed into this perception of awareness and still bound by processes that unfold, that in some way they are too much fixated into the higher light and yet not still being themselves, not still being free. And that continues towards full consciousness, where one removes or untangles further knots, thus feeling more at ease, more free, no longer being afraid to lose the light of awareness that they gained, and allowing themselves to be much more spontaneous. Now, spending some time in full consciousness, one becomes more and more natural. Usually there is a process of becoming disinterested in spirituality, because spirituality was a big journey. And some of the students come and say, I'm losing interest in spirituality. Is this normal? I say yes, because before spirituality, you were living your life in a certain way, and then you became spiritual. Your hobbies have changed, your practices, your way of life has changed. You became a spiritual person in a certain way. When one comes a full circle to full consciousness, one gets astonished of normality that comes back, that suddenly certain spiritual aspects are no longer of interest because they were the tools or the means to grow, to overcome certain obstacles. One also gets astonished that suddenly they start liking simple things like painting, gardening, grocery shopping, doing whatever is really normal. While before it was seen as meaningless, useless, spiritual attainment was more important. So these kind of processes start settling in once the seeking comes to an end, once the search is complete, or you return to your natural self. And this is a process of normalization and also the witnessing the processes of self-actualization, where simple things are embraced, but also since you are open to full consciousness, it is the most simple, normal, and extraordinary state there ever is. That's why it's called natural, truly natural. It's so simple, it's so obvious, and yet so extraordinary. So as your body adjusts, as the system adjusts to full consciousness, to being in this natural state, normal human things come back, such as hobbies that you abandoned because you were too spiritual. Also, this greater force moves through you. The greater consciousness emanates through you. So at the same time, start getting a sense of actualizing yourself, or you start putting this light, awakening, greater force in use, and you start discovering what is the natural way for you to put it in use. The mind comes up with a lot of illusions, fantasies, idealizations. On one hand, they can be supportive. On another hand, they can become an obstacle. I'll give you an example. Supportive qualities of the mind is that it has a desire for freedom. It wants to complete the awakening, to come back to the natural self. So this is a positive quality, a goal, an intention that is put forth. A limiting perspective can be that coming back to full consciousness is only for spiritual teachers, for gurus, for some extremely special ones. And thus it becomes a self-imposed obstacle because it is for everyone. And I usually give this example. Let's assume that there is another planet somewhere in our big galaxy, or even in another galaxy, where every human being is enlightened, is in their full consciousness, and the whole civilization is enlightened. So how would that look like? Do you think that everybody would be a guru and teach each other how to live, how to be? No. Because the problem is fixed, because nobody anymore is conditioned, is illusioned, is suppressed by mind, by conditioned patterns. So then in the enlightened civilization, what happens is that everybody is fully themselves, and the gardener is a gardener, and he or she enjoys it. The connection with the soil, with the plants, or looking after the animals, and chef enjoying making food, and a scientist, a doctor, a researcher, everybody enjoys and loves what they do. what is natural to them, what they're really interested in, what they love doing. And still in enlightened civilization, there still will be some gurus or teachers who have yet deeper access to a higher dimension or a higher realm. And they act as a bridge. So it is an easier job for a spiritual teacher in enlightened civilization because they no longer have to work with problems or with their conditioning. So in case of enlightened civilization, a spiritual teacher, we may say, would simply share what is even higher up, how things are in the formless realm, how the universe functions in a larger sense. And perhaps there are other universes and other higher planes, divine planes, how things are up there, but no longer having to be a doctor of the mind, fixing conditioning. Sometimes I jokingly recognize that I act as a doctor, although I need to make a disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. Going into your deepest obstacles, the deepest knots in your psyche and unknotting it all. It's like a certain surgical procedure, having to navigate through many layers of confusion and to find the very core of it all and unhook it like a laser precision. That's what doctors do, isn't it? So, jokingly, sometimes I experience that kind of a sense. But that's that. On the other side, of course, it's much more enjoyable to show you the higher way, the higher light. So self-actualization is being, first of all, your true self, and then allowing it to express through you in the way that is natural to you. Therefore, full consciousness is for everyone. It is not exclusive. And self-mastery is a path for a more difficult path, a path of a teacher or a master, where then you have to look at every single detail, at every single aspect of the energy system, the chakras and kundalini and all the finer bodies, your finer vehicles of consciousness, and have to see how it all functions in great detail and developing ability by looking into yourself and having a great discerning detailed eye for all of it, and then helping someone else also to open up and to assist them. Because in some way, self-realization can be quite easy. With some help, it can happen over few years. And not that much of self-mastery is required that apart from general self-care techniques, how to take care of your own emotions and certain challenges. But the word mastery applies to ability to help someone else. So it's quite easy to come to full consciousness yourself with help, but it is 10 times more difficult to help somebody else because someone else is so different. Their journey is not your journey. Their path is not your path. Although sometimes there can be similarities, but to help someone else to come to full consciousness is so much more difficult. So that requires a much, much more work upon yourself and ability to see into the other, so to speak. And self-mastery is a never-ending path, a never-ending living where not only you look deeply into yourself, not only you look deeply into the others, but also you look very deeply into the whole creation, into the whole universe and universes and planes of existence. As we know, there are 21 lower universes, there are 700 quadrillion higher universes, and there are at least 6 divine regions where gaining insight into all of it requires a lot of gifts, a lot of detail, a lot of precision, a lot of clarity. So that is the path of self-mastery. And that basically includes everything, because it is a recognition that I am everything, and everything is myself. The other is myself. The environment is myself. The sky is myself. The stars in the night are myself. So everything is myself, and therefore looking deeper and deeper into everything. How can we become clear vessels for this light of consciousness? It is a continuous purification, a path of self-mastery. It is a continuous recognition of the laws of nature, laws of vibration, of the cycles of life, cycles of experience, and continuous ascension. And ascension means that not only you ascend from the higher to even higher, but you ascend from your normal to the new normal, and you ascend from your bottom difficulties also higher up. It also means that you can see deeper. At some point, it became very natural for me to look into my cells, to look into my atoms that compose this form, to look into the basic building blocks of reality, and in this way to recognize the nature of creation, how everything is made up, not only in a physical sense, that's the easier part, but in a deeper and deeper sense. Many say that it is an easier path to see God rather than to understand God.